Welcome everyone to another meditative movement meetup. Today, our focus is legs like roots. So this is just I say that term because nature is an ongoing inspiration for me. And I also realize that we are of nature, not in a conceptual way in terms of every cell in us, every living thing moving through us can be reflected in the world around us, in other people, and also in the plants and animals. And trees are a big, wonderful inspiration that I look at when I look at the structure of the body. And if we can develop a greater root system, this wonderful lower body that supports us, then that's a really, really useful sentiment as we move through life, and to really plant our roots down in the ground and really draw up and receive what we need. So maybe there's some things happening with your lower body today or that have built up over time. The most important thing as we go into this is your lower body is completely yours and unique, and we're not going into this trying to like eat a watermelon all in one bite and trying to manifest this intention instantly. So it's not like at the end of this that I will have these root-like structures that will magically grow and I will be planted into the ground. However, you might feel more grounded and more connected to your lower body. You might also feel more aware of things that are important for you to focus on, to continue to feel more grounded and connected as you move through life. So my intent as we go into this is not be too kind of conceptual in terms of what does grounding mean and all that sort of stuff, because it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. I'd really like you to be open to a greater sense of relaxation, centeredness, and of course for you to define what that means to you by way of contrast. So as we go through the session, you might go through continual layers of observation and awareness, and you might notice things changing based upon comparison of from moment to moment. So rather than kind of us going into this intellectual idea, this absolute term of what it means to have like a grounded, connected, rooted lower body, what we're kind of looking at doing is stripping away the layers to that which is not that essence. So this will make more sense as we go into it. So just planting a seed for what lays ahead. So I'm going to take you through lots of different layers of practice. We're going to go through the building blocks that I generally share the approach with what we're talking about with Movement Monk. And so we'll go through potentially similar practices, but with a very different focus. And you might notice as we focus in different ways, how the practice changes. So say, for example, if I focus on upgrading movement capacity and we're challenging the edges of where we're at, it's going to be a very different experience to if we just focus on expanding perception. The intensity might be lower and you might notice more things about your lower body. So you might notice little things like that come through, and I'll talk through that little by little as we get there. So all you need to do is just get yourself kind of a comfortable space and find yourself just in your own happy place, and we'll get into the practice. All right, so to begin, the first practice that we're going to look at is a lower center meditation. So really the intent here is to start to bring, if you do have a tendency to exist and operate from this analytical kind of head way of living, I definitely would put my hand up that I get drawn into it from time to time, less and less as I progress. However, it's easy for that to happen in this kind of very busy analytical world that we often can exist in. So take this as an opportunity to really allow your mind to start to sink down into this lower center, into your lower abdomen. So a simple way to do that is through touch. So I'm just going to adjust my camera so you guys can see. But all we're going to do is just place two fingers, and this is just like a very simple way to focus our mind into the body. And so there's my belly button there. I'm just going to go kind of in between my belly button and my hips. So just focusing on this point. And we're going to rest here for about 5 minutes. And really the intent that we're looking to do to begin is just allow the mind to sink, almost like it's sinking down your spinal column into this point. And anytime the mind gets distracted, that's okay. Just gently guide it back to this point. This is very different than if we try and think about this from an external perspective. So rather than trying to intellectualize what we need to do and go from an outside in perspective, this is all about just letting your mind rest and sinking down inside the body into this lower center. So you'll hear a gong when I start, and you'll hear a gong when we end, and then we'll have some integration between each practice. So let's go into this. We'll go into silence, and I'll guide you through this practice to a little bit more of a detailed degree. So with your fingers on your lower center, just become aware of the sensation, the physical sensation. Your eyes can be open, your eyes can be closed. Each have different focuses and different benefits, and you might experiment. Half the time, have your eyes open, half the time, have your eyes closed, or if you're familiar with more eyes closed practices, then I invite you to go into that space. So all we're doing is just become aware of the feeling, of the sensation. What's happening in this area of my body? Just imagine that your mind is going down an elevator shaft from your brain down your spinal column, one floor at a time, to then arrive at the bottom floor into the lower center. There's nothing to feel, there's nothing to achieve. All we're doing is practicing attuning the mind to this space. And this will become more and more useful through daily life and also in the practices coming up. So now all you need to do is just let your focus rest into the lower center. And just notice. If your breath needs to be expressed in a certain way, let it happen. Maybe a sigh comes out. Maybe it's like, oh. Just let yourself come back to your center and let your breathing just naturally on its own rhythm and momentum soften and deepen. You might notice sensations changing. You might notice certain thoughts and emotions coming into your awareness. All of that is completely fine. Just let it come and be open to just watch, to observe yourself as we connect with this physical practice. We're utilizing the reflective nature of the body as it shows us what's happening in our mind. And over time, we might start to realize that our mind and body are the same thing. Just resting in this space for a couple more minutes. If you feel any tension building up in any areas of your body, just observe the habits connected to that, if there are some. You can make adjustments to how you position yourself. If you notice that you kind of sink down and slouch, it's okay. We don't want to forcefully try and straighten everything. We're just gently let everything become more spacious, become more open. Notice what's happening. There's no good, there's no bad in this space. This is just allowing our focus to deepen and to support the following practices coming up. Okay, so that's 5 minutes. Maybe that felt like a really fast time. Maybe that felt like a really long time. Just notice what's happening now. And as you continue simple little practices like this, we could call it a meditation, just notice how useful it can be just in the preparation to go into your body, to go into practice. We create this sort of buffer, this space where I really let myself enter into the body in a gentle way rather than like, all right, forcefully kind of now it's time to do my exercise. So next we're going to go into the intent here is about expanding perception in this next practice. This is all about becoming aware of your lower body, not trying to do anything, not trying to fix anything, but just becoming aware of maybe habits that you have in day-to-day life and how they might be present in this moment. And if we can become more aware and expand our perception of really what's causing them, underlying factors of the mind that might be leading to these habits, well, then over time we can choose different things. So, really, as we go into this, I'd just like you to go into this practice with the mind to just really love what you see, to become more aware. And then as you practice this, if you repeat this practice over time, then you might notice that the awareness of your habits rise and then you can choose. This is just simply all about bringing more choice into the way we use our lower body. It'd be useful if you get set up just in a space where you can stand. And what we're going to do is move from the feet up. Okie dokie. So we'll start the timer. To begin, what we're going to focus on is just starting to look at just different movements around the feet. Okay, so often we forget our feet, they're enclosed in shoes and all of that sort of thing, but start to become aware of the movement of the toes, the movement of the arches of the foot, the way you distribute your weight. Maybe you feel more forward on your feet throughout your day in a general sense. Or maybe you have habits to being on the back of your heels, or maybe one of your feet collapses in or rolls out, or there can be all sorts of habits. Just what we're looking to do is soften those habits by making different choices now, not trying to forcefully push against those habits. So we're just becoming aware of the feet. And if you feel to, or if it's within your capabilities at this point in time, you can bring touch into the activity as well. So just gentle touch. This is not essential, but touch is a really, really powerful tool for us to deepen feeling and awareness of the body. So we're just bringing some love to the feet. So you can move onto the toes, open your feet, close your feet. Just bringing some love and awareness. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Now, as you continue to become aware of your feet, we're going to start to look at the ankles and just starting to gently circle the ankles, moving them back and forward. So we're just really letting our awareness move into the ankles. You can gently move into where you feel confident and maybe into space where it's a little bit of a challenge. Just knock on the door of that challenge. Let your breathing do what it does. Main thing here is we're just looking at doing our best to not hold the breathing. So it's useful to start to move slowly, and then gradually we can start to speed the movement as the mind starts to rest more completely into the body. So next we'll come to the knees. So we can go one knee at a time if you choose. Just putting some touch into the knees if that's possible for you at this time. Just really starting to explore the fronts of the knee, around the kneecap, the insides, the outsides, around the back of the knee. Then we can gently start to bend the knee and straighten the knee. The knee has also some wonderful capacities to flex and bow. Once it's working with the ankles and the feet and the hips, often I talk about the knee joint as the messenger joint. If there's stuff going on with the knees, we don't want to shoot the messenger. We want to see if we can get clear messages from the feet to the hips through to the torso. So if your knees are trying to do more than what they're designed to do, then what we want to do is see if we can loosen and soften the structures that surround the knee. Okay. Once again, we don't need to achieve this all today. This is something that can just build up over time. So just really become aware of the knees. And then we'll come into the hips. So we can get the thumbs into the crevices of the front of the hips, becoming aware of all of the different ways that the hips can move. We can tilt them back and forward. We can shift them from side to side. It's such a wonderful structure that connects to this ball and socket around our femurs. So just getting everything moving at the level that's appropriate, nice and slow, just really becoming aware of what's happening today. And the more we can look at things in the present moment, then the more that can change in a way that's supportive over time. You can just move at the level that's appropriate for you, okay? But to start, we're just gently coming into the legs with the intent to expand perception. Okay, so that's our first 5 minutes. So now just take a walk around, just have a moment, just notice whatever you notice about your lower body. Notice what came up as you were doing that. So as you notice what's going on, just let that settle in. We're going to go into some stillness practices next. Some of you might be familiar with stillness practices. Some of you, this might be new. Stillness can be challenging because it really brings things to the surface. It brings habits to the surface. So often a common thing, when people come to work with me is, you have maybe, let's say I have like a knee challenge, and then you come in and it's like, oh, but it's not quite happening today. So I don't know how to talk about it because it happened in the past, but it comes up randomly, just as an example. So one thing that we often do at the beginning is we go into stillness. We let these habits surface. Now, what this does is it allows us to accelerate the cycle of observing habits. So if we can accelerate that cycle, then we can catch those habits faster and then start to allow those habits that might be rigid and stuck to change. There could be all sorts of different things connected to why we're holding our body in certain ways. It could be a belief system. It could be a series of emotions. It could be just a feeling or a fear of hurting an area that you might have hurt in the past. All of these things, allow them to come into your awareness as we're here in stillness. We're just going to do some very, very simple practices, but that doesn't mean that they're not powerful and profound in nature. So I'm going to start the timer again, and I'll guide you through some stillness for the lower body. So just find yourself at a relaxed posture with your feet about shoulder width apart. And if it's too challenging for them to be pointing straight ahead, that's okay. Just go to whatever distance, whatever turning of your feet is appropriate, with the intent over time to let them to become more parallel. Now, one thing that we're looking to build is stillness on the outside, movement on the inside. But if you build up tension, then feel free to just let subtle movements happen inside your lower body. So if you feel like, oh, I'm getting tension around my knees, let the knees move, let the hips move, let the feet move. So as we do this, what we're going to do is place the hands on the lower back. And the main thing that I'd like you to allow to happen is the weight of your hands. Just let them guide your pelvis to sit down. Particularly if you have this a little bit of tension and the pelvis kicking out, what we're looking to do is just let the hands gently, not forcefully push, but let the weight of the hands guide the pelvis to relax. And as this happens, you might notice that a significant amount of weight drops into your legs, and that might be a new experience. That's okay. This is part of really fortifying, strengthening, and stabilizing these lower structures to be more connected to the ground that we stand upon. So with that in mind, just letting your hands rest on the hips, on the lower back, and just breathe in any way that you choose. And each time, just at every exhale, just let your weight sink down into the ground. Let your pelvis sit down as much as you can. Become aware of any habits of posture that are there that are leading to tensions. And know that you have the power to choose over time. These habits don't have to be there all the time. So we're getting to know ourselves as much as we're training and developing our body at a physical level as well. Just notice any thoughts that come up and how that affects your physical body. Notice what's here. Maybe you haven't paid attention to the body in a while. Maybe we overly pay attention to the body. Just let your awareness sink down into that lower center anytime your mind gets distracted. Just allow your breathing to naturally soften and deepen. And when in doubt with the lower body, go to the feet. These wonderful structures that support the wonderful body that you have above. Pay attention to where your weight's naturally falling. Is it falling more to one side? If it is, that's okay. See if we can gently allow it to center. If you've got a feeling for that with your hands, feel free to take them away. You can either just relax them by your side, or you can bring it into a posture where, let's say, your hands are resting on a table. We'll just go for about another minute just to let that settle in, even though the gong has chimed. It's a wonderful thing when you go into practice is to be malleable, to let what needs to unfold. There's no good or bad experiences here, just experiences. And what we're doing is developing our minds to be okay with all experiences, to not judge them, to just observe and expand perception, to really get to know what they are. We might have an initial reaction where we perceive it as good or bad, and know that that is just one bit of information. What we're looking to do is expand the information. The more vantage points that we can look at the sensations of the body, then the less reactive we can be, and the more opportunity we have to make choices that are in alignment with our highest need from moment to moment. So now just take another moment and just have a walk around, nice and slow, just feeling your weight just shift from one side to the other. Just feeling your weight relax down, just let that settle in and integrate. We're just planting a seed here, planting a seed that can grow over time. So far, we've done some work around expanding perception of the lower body. So you might notice a heightened sense of feeling and awareness, or you might notice a heightened sense of noticing challenges that are there. All of that's great. We're leaning into what's happening in the present moment without judging it. Next, we're going to go into a practice that's really all about developing a bit more ease of movement as we move the lower body in a more complex way. So this is called infinity hips. So I'll take you through it little by little. We'll go through and we'll practice it, and then once we get a feeling for what's going on, I'll set a timer and we'll explore it for about 5 minutes. So what we're looking to do here, I'll show you the basic movement that we're doing. Your stance width can change over time, but I'm choosing a slightly wider than shoulder width stance. But basically what we're doing is developing this spiraling pattern. So we're turning in this figure 8 or infinity type pattern from one side to the other side. And what we're looking to do over time is draw bigger, gradually bigger circles. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm doing my best to not bob up and down. I'm looking to keep my hips at the same line. And this is going to draw me into my hips to a much deeper degree. So you can place your hands on your hips, so then you've got awareness of what's going on at the pelvis. And as you're doing this, just start to become aware of if I kind of go into this Donald Duck butt habitually, or if I can let my pelvis stay balanced and moving and have options. There's no right or wrong way to do this movement. What I'd like you to do as we're getting a feel for it is just let everything be soft. and not be too rigid for it. So your feet can go at all different sorts of ways. So naturally, if they're out wider, we're going to get less torque through the lower body. If they turn in more, then as we circle, we get a greater amount of spiraling, that's stretching all the way up through the ankle, through the knee, through the hip. Now, I recommend that you build this up gradually over time. So useful at the beginning to sort of find neutrality. Then over time, you might start to then work the feet in just a little bit, so then we can start to open up the ankle structures as well. So the key as we're doing this is just really become aware of each joint. So as I turn, I'm going into my big toe, out to my little toes, through my ankles, through my knees, through my hips. And then I'm transitioning into the big toe, into the little toes. I'm drawing as big a circle as I can. And just start with a posture that's easy. Could be nice and high and nice and easy, right? Notice I'm just letting my arms just naturally participate with the movement. So these are the basics. Let's now explore. I'll talk more about it as we practice for the next 5 minutes. So we're just smoothly working on this figure 8 pattern. So what you can start to focus on is really getting this push and pull relationship of the lower body. So rather than kind of being flopping into areas, pushing that foot down into the ground to transition your weight across, pushing the other foot to transition your weight across. And then if that feels comfortable, you can then pull from the other side at the same time. So we get this push and pull, push and pull. We're kind of developing a quality of movement that you might see in Tai Chi, but we're not getting bogged down by trying to do things in a certain way. I recommend that you start slow. Every millimeter of the movement is as important as the next. And you might notice, when I started doing this movement, my hips were clicking and cracking because I was sort of tight in different lines of tissue. So I was like really tight through a particular line in my adductors and through the back of my hamstrings. So as I turned, it would go clunk, clunk. But over time, as I did this gentle motion, that tissue started to get massaged out. The bones started to align or have options to align differently because they were stuck habitually. Now, it's also really, really useful and interesting as we start to move across to keep pushing this leg down into the ground, the leg that we're moving away from, and notice the connection and stretch that we can get through that side as we turn into it, really getting this beautiful rotational spiraling stretch. Now remember, we're just going with what's easy. So we're looking to find ease in this movement. So if you need to make it easier, make it easier. Once we establish a space of ease in the body, then we can grow that. Rather than to try and force the body to relax, we gently lean into the challenge, but not too much. Become aware of our edges and then find ease within them. Continuing to keep your focus, if you can, down into your lower center and on your hips, staying, not going up and down, but staying on the same plane. As you move to one side, the other side becomes light. Notice you might have different ways of using the muscles. If you're noticing you're overusing certain areas or your lower back's tensing up, pay attention to any habits connecting to that. Remember, you are the master and commander of your experience. Notice any habits of the way you go about things. Maybe we have a habit of pushing our body. Maybe we have a habit of rushing through movements. And maybe that can then lead to certain experiences of the body. The body gives us signals to say, hey, did you know that maybe this isn't really helpful for me? So we have an opportunity to invite new ways of being in this moment. And that can then fortify over time. We can strengthen different aspects of our character. Maybe we have a strong will to achieve something. And maybe we can balance that out with allowing things to happen. Feel free to pause in any parts of the movement and just check in with your hips, with your knees, with your ankles. You'll notice over time that there's infinite ways to be able to perform movements in general and this movement. Notice I'm bringing the arms in more now. Looking to make the body a connected whip-like structure. All right, so once again, just take a walk around. Notice what you notice. Take some deep breaths. So far we've been focusing on that practice was all about developing ease, not trying to push the body too far, but looking at the quality at which we move. And can we cultivate a more easeful quality as we go into a very simple practice? The beauty of what we just did is there's so many complexities that we have the opportunity to touch on in that simple pattern. The pelvis can go in all sorts of different directions. The knees can go in all sorts of different directions. The ankles, the feet. So everything that you would do likely with your lower body in a day-to-day basis, we have an opportunity to look at the way we use the lower body in this very simple, but also quite complex figure eight infinity type pattern. So you can continue to explore this over time, and it keeps giving the more you practice it. So the next practice, if you have so far noticed that, oh, there's some pains or tensions in your lower body, I really recommend that you go into this next practice with the intent to just be easeful, just to work with what you can. But also, if you are noticing that your lower body's ready for a little bit more challenge, this could be an opportunity to challenge it. So we're going to go into this next practice with the intent to upgrade our capacity a little bit. So that might be to go into a slightly deeper range of motion throughout the set, or it might be to be able to hold a deeper stance for a little bit longer. The main thing here is just find your level. Just choose, if you go into an area where it's like, well, that's a bit tough, just stay on the edge, knock on the door of what you can do and let it open over time rather than trying to kick the damn door down. Okay, so, and if things are happening, if there's an allowance and an ease to move a little bit deeper, then by all means go into that. So what we're going to do is explore a cross stance. So a lot of beautiful details in here and can bring up some wonderful opportunities for growth. So at a very basic level, we're going to step behind. So you can step at varying different distances, and you can adjust your torso in varying ways. So to start, what we're going to do is just explore what's going on at the pelvis. Now, as we do this front leg, it's coiling. It's got a wonderful torsional stretch once again. Notice that has certain challenges potentially. If you're not used to that, I recommend that you start really gently. You know, even here is enough for some people. But what we're going to do is just start to explore the movement of the pelvis as we go into different heights. So just continuing to really anchor in. We can have more weight on the front foot, more weight on the back foot. The main thing here is that this is your exploration zone, right? We can go all the way down into it a little further, but just becoming aware of the movements of the pelvis as we do it, okay? So I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, and what we'll do is spend a little bit of time on one leg. If you get tired, shake it out, and then we'll go to the other side, okay? We might do a couple of sets each side. Just choose your own adventure for how long you stay in each leg, and I'll be practicing along with you. So just know that if you're observing me, that this is about your body. I'll give you a general guide, okay? So just letting our weight, our awareness drop into one of our legs, taking a step at whatever distance, and becoming aware of the movement of the pelvis. So we're gently moving into maybe a stretch type sensation and then letting it off. Gently moving in, letting it off. Moving in, letting it off. And each time you let it off, you could deepen into the stance a little further. Moving into this stretch, let it off. You can come higher to rest a little if you need. Let your breathing express anything that is within. Rather than suppress it down, let it be expressed. As we do this, we can also turn further into the stance. So we're just gently moving in and out of the challenge that is appropriate for you. And I'm only putting my hands on my hips so you can use it as a tool for awareness. But if you've got good awareness there, then by all means, just let your hands do whatever they do. You can bring the hands into the movement as well to connect the whole body. So I'm just going to change legs, but do whatever you would like to do. In this side, I'm going to go a little deeper. I'm going to spend some time more in the bottom position. Now, what you can also do is place your hands on the ground. If you're getting into these bottom positions, use your fingertips. So then we just take a little bit of weight out of the legs. I might see if I can lift the other leg. That might be too challenging for some or easy for others. But I can use the hands as a tool to adjust and scale my intensity. You'll likely be getting some stimulation around through the groin, the adductors, the quads, maybe even through the hips and the glutes. It doesn't matter necessarily a muscle that you work. What it's about is actually seeing if we can direct the stretch through the whole lower body, noticing if we are loading up in just a couple of areas. So once again, if you need, place your fingertips on the ground. It can also be really useful to start to explore directing this knee through further and further. Bringing our body into different positions. Changing the weight distribution. All I'm doing as I'm going through this is just checking in. Where are my edges? Seeing if I can expand a little further without force. And over time, you might notice that this builds and we increase the range of motion just by simply spending more time in our areas of challenge. We can also bend forward, get into the backs of the legs further. Notice we're focusing on the center of the body moving and then letting everything else connect around this center point. Doing my best to just make the movements nice and smooth. Moving into different areas of the stretch. All right, so that's 5 minutes. So just take a moment, just shake your lower body out, let it relax off. You can give it some bit of vigor, massaging through the legs. Let the muscles soften around the bones. Take a breath, and we'll just come back to stillness. Just letting everything sink down. We've been on a bit of a journey into the lower body. Notice what's changed about your perception of this wonderful structure that supports you through life. Maybe things have come up for you to look at. Maybe you don't like what you see. That's okay. This is about seeing sometimes things that challenge us and cultivating a sense of love for these things. For not trying to push experiences away, but to let life in. So just keep exploring your lower body. Just let it relax. When you're ready, just come back and take a moment. You can sit down, you can lay down. Just let your breath start to settle. So well done, well done. So through that session, we explored a couple of different building blocks that I generally teach from. So we started off just really with the focus on expanding perception. So really becoming more aware in a very simple series of movements and postures. We then started to go a little bit further and started to look at how can I cultivate this quality of ease as I do simple movements. We use the infinity, that beautiful figure 8 pattern, to then start to map out and explore lots of different ways that our lower body can move. We then start to go a little bit further down the path and with the focus to upgrade our capacity. So what you experience today is what you experience today. If you revisited this tomorrow, maybe you'll experience the effects of what you've done today, and maybe you'll need to adjust your intensity as you go into it. Or maybe you have a rest and you'll come back to it in a couple of days. The most important thing here is that what we accumulate over time, because over time we can build up habits in the way we use our whole body, but specifically as we're focusing on our lower body here, we can build up habits in the way that we use our lower body. And these get thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. So we can't expect to undo all of them in one session. But if we do show up for a little bit of practice and give some love to these areas of our body, the lower body here is the focus, then over time we can gradually let these habits, these layers that might have built up, to dissolve away over time. We can really get back to the core of moving our lower body without these restrictions there, with a greater sense of freedom. And through that process, we can also get to know ourselves better and realize actually how innately connected our mind is to our body and how heavily the behaviors driven from our mind affect the experience of our body.